we have a lot of A's. We've got 2 Andrews. So we've got one of our directors, Andrew Durling. At the end, we've got Andrew Forsey again. Thank you, Andrew. We're just rolling Andrew into every possible thing that we can before the end of the day. Thank you for that. And we've got Anna, to my right, Anna Card from East Sussex County Council. And then we've got Fenya, who you've all just heard from. And we've also just got an additional panel member, Cara Mazumadar, who's a poet and artist at Compass Arts as well. So thank you all for being here. So just to give you a bit of background, the reason I'm chairing this panel is because in my day job, my role is around equality, diversity and inclusion. So this seemed to be a good fit. And as in the world that I work in, as you heard from our CEO earlier on Compassionate Wild Farming, the animal welfare sector is unsurprisingly incredibly non-diverse and is something that we are all pushing to change. And as part of my director hat here, I also sit on Sustain's Food and Racial Justice Network group. So there's a lot of work being done there to try and make sure that we're being more inclusive and as inclusive as possible. And for those of you who are from Eastbourne, which is I'm assuming probably the lion's share of you will know that we are not the most diverse city around. So similar to earlier on, we'll just ask a few questions, and then if you have any questions, if you could scribble them on your Appley post-it notes that you've got should have in your drinks holders. We're going to do slightly different tactic this time. If you've got them and kind of think of your questions while we're talking, pass them along to the end of your line, and Hannah and Karen are going to come around with little Tupperwares to collect them in, and then we'll try and get through as many as we can. But we are, as we said earlier, on running over time, so we may have to just cut things a bit short, so apologies for that. So if we just do another little introductions, everybody can just say who they are and where they're from, unless they've already done it. Andrew, you may not want to do that again. There was another mic on the chair. You go, Andy.
Yeah, I'm Andy Durling. I'm one of the directors of the Eastbourne Food Partnership and one of its founder members, along with Karen. Yeah, that's it really. I should basically work with my colleagues to try and keep the show on the road.
Are you skipping? Yeah, this is Andrew. You all know Andrew.
Hi everybody, so I'm Anna, I work in the public health team at East Sussex County Council, and I have the privilege of working with all the food partnerships across East Sussex, and I lead on the areas around healthy weight and physical inactivity, and unsurprisingly obviously food comes hugely into the healthy weight agenda, so that's why I'm here today.
Hi, my name's Cara Mazumadar, and I'm an artist and I'm with Compass Arts.
Thank you all. So I'm just going to start, and I'll do similar to Josh earlier, and I'll try and keep an eye on how long everybody's talking for, and just pose a couple of questions to you. So Andy, I'll come to you first. What would a sustainable, equitable, inclusive and healthy local food system look like?
Right, big question. I can't possibly answer it in 1 minute, but basically, if I deal with the equitable first, I think that's quite easy because, as has been said all through the day so far, we need to make sure that food is affordable for everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody across the town, whatever their socio-economic status. And if we don't do that, then we haven't got a proper healthy food system. And not just equitable access to food, but access to good food, good, healthy, nutritious food. That applies to all of us, not just people on low income. Because a lot of us on very good income are eating very nutritionally very poor food because of the abundance of ultra-processed food in the system and the way food is produced. To my mind, to make it truly equitable, if we're to make sure everybody can afford food, I think one really good answer is to introduce a universal basic income. So I'd love to have a discussion with people like Andrew about that, because to my mind, the universal credit system isn't working, and I don't think it can be fixed. So I think we need a more radical solution where we introduce universal basic income across the board as a right of citizenship with no means testing whatsoever.
Time's up. You only picked one of them, but it's a large question. So, what do you agree?
A sustainable, equitable, inclusive, healthy local food system will be one in which everyone, regardless of their income, can access, afford, prepare and consume the food they need for a healthy and independent life. Full stop.
Snappy. Yeah.
Genuinely, that's our mission at Feeding Britain. That's what we believe. You shouldn't be disqualified on the grounds of income, race, class, ethnicity, whatever it might be, when it comes to access and afford the food that you want to eat and that your body needs, with dignity.
And because you did that in half a minute, I'm gonna
Giving back
steal
some
your
of the time I was
time.
greedy with earlier.
How do you engage with those communities that are more marginalised? How do you see the best way of doing that?
Drawing on some of my earlier comments around the role of these food clubs, whether we call them larders, pantries, social supermarkets or something else, I genuinely see in this form of provision a means of serving previously underserved communities. If you do them right, you can turn them into places where people actually want to be rather than feel as though they have to be. They're places that people enjoy being, and they can meet friends there and make friends there and have fun with food and involving food. So I do think that if in a given town you had proper distribution of food clubs with the appropriate range of services around the food and the appropriate range of goods on the shelves and the fridges, that would give you a pretty good foundation upon which to build toward this system.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, so to me. So I guess for me, I think I'm not going to repeat what both the Andrews have said. There's so much good work already happening across Eastbourne that's sort of supporting creating that food system and building a food system that works for the people of Eastbourne, the economy, and also all of our health. But I guess for me, it's happening in very small pockets across Eastbourne, and it needs to become more systemic across the whole of the borough, across the whole of East Sussex, across the whole of the country, basically. So for me, it's how we go about doing that and building that and making it part of kind of our actual structure and the systems that we all kind of live and work within, so that it's not just happening on a really small scale at sort of ground community level. It's how it's just naturally happening across the board. So that's how I would like to see it. It's a big ask, but that's how I'd like to do it.
Thank you.
I think many of us in the room have been involved with East Sussex County Council making it happen, asset-based community development. I'm a huge advocate of asking questions, getting to know the community, finding out what the barriers are, and working from the ground up. So all I would say is get to know the community and embed within your own families a culture of getting to know the community. I'm proud to say that my youngest, when he was at East Sussex College, invited 5 fellow students for Sunday lunch and asked me to cook a roast chicken and an apple pie. And could we use the best service and glasses that we had? And these 5 youngsters, not one of them had ever seen a china plate or a real glass before. And one of them had said, I've heard about roast chicken. It's rather delicious, isn't it? So I think we need to start with our own families, embed a culture of asking questions and really, really get to know our communities and get to know the barriers.
I would start with even being able to access in supermarkets food. I have phobias about using service tills. I need a human interaction. So I can't go into Sainsbury's. That leaves me with Marks and Spencer's in town, which is better quality but more expensive. And I have food phobia, so that makes it even more tricky in accessing. Probably if I had more informed choices. But they're my difficulties.
I'll just come back briefly on that point.
Go for it.
Somebody said to me the other day, wouldn't it actually be a sign of success if, as well as food banks no longer being needed, social supermarkets disappeared as well? And somebody else who's listening to this said, no, actually, because if you lost the latter, you're not just losing the supermarket, you're losing the social. I thought that just come to mind when you mentioned those circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I think, Cara, what you're saying kind of goes to my point of how do we ensure that we're engaging everybody? Because we obviously know that every person is individual and everybody has their own individual needs, but we need to be reaching out to those people who might need some additional support and making sure that they're not the ones who are being marginalised and pushed to the edges and like, you know, being stuck with having to go to M&S and spend all of your money, albeit on maybe some very tasty stuff. But yeah, so a bit, and again, going back to what Anna was saying as well, obviously, it really is, and this has come up many times today with discussions I've had with people who've come up to us about how we can make it all a lot more coordinated and more of a joined up effort, so that we're not all having to kind of fight individually for the same end cause, basically. Thank you all. So leading on from that, and I'll go back to you, Cara, if I may, because it kind of leads on from what you were saying. What do you think the main barriers are that we're facing to achieving that equitable, inclusive food system?
For me, it's lack of engagement with my community is Compass, that's my tribe, and lack of engagement with finding out what our issues are, what our problems around food are, where they stem from, because without that investigation, we're never going to move on from them.
Yep, Fenya, maybe
Yeah,
come back down the line.
So to add to that, we have an open house every Monday and Wednesday morning at Compass Arts. It's at Unit 760 Ashwood Square, and you're invited to come and have a conversation with us. We call ourselves the Free International University, and it is all about social research. Thank you.
And just to quickly come back to Cara's point about the engagement, that's actually a piece of work we're currently just about to start doing at the moment. So we're working with an organisation to find out what it's like to live in East Sussex around kind of the food and also the physical activity side of it, so that we can then hear from the community what the issues are. So then hopefully then that will help us with like the solutions of what to do going forward. So I just wanted to quickly add that piece of work is coming and you will all hear about it very soon. I guess in terms of barriers, for me, I think a lot of the barriers that I face in my job, sometimes you feel there's so much great work happening at a community level, and that's the way we structured the food partnerships that they were at the boroughs and districts, because there's so much individuality even across East Sussex that we didn't want to have a county partnership. We wanted to have them at a local level because there is so much great ground level work going on. But for me, the barriers are at that national level, the food industry and how they're regulated, and I feel that that's the barrier that I face day to day is that I come up against is that kind of national policy, and so that's the thing that I struggle with mostly.
Thank you.
Andrew?
I think the three main barriers I'd identify are firstly income, secondly access, and thirdly awareness. It's that time of year in the run-up to the budget when you get the reports from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the Resolution Foundation, and so on. And the ones that both of those organisations just publish make for grim reading, in that without course correction in the budget in 4 weeks, the numbers of children being submerged beneath the poverty line over the next 5 years will grow, and it will grow dramatically. Against that backdrop, it's not surprising that we see more kids living in households where food is scarce and money to buy food is scarce. So I think we do need that course correction, looking at policies like ending the 2-child limit on certain benefits and tax credits. To put it crudely, if you get more money in people's pockets, they're going to be able to buy more and better food. So that's number one. But number two, around access, I think we know 30, 40 years ago in the debate that the term food desert began to emerge with a vengeance. There are estates, neighbourhoods, villages, communities where even if you're not beneath the poverty line, you still can't access a shop that has good quality, nutritious and affordable food. So again, I think that's where food clubs are playing a role in serving previously underserved communities in food deserts. And thirdly, on awareness, I touched in the morning session about means-tested benefits and services like the NHS Healthy Start programme, free school meals, and now also pension credits. I'm convinced half of these schemes are covered by the Official Secrets Act because hardly anyone seems to know about them, and particularly the people who stand to benefit most from them. And then if they do know about them, is it a bureaucratic minefield you've got to navigate actually to apply for and receive that support? Or is there a sense of stigma associated with claiming them? Hence my idea earlier around shifting it from opt-in to opt-out. The government has data on households that are eligible but not claiming different types of support. Why don't you contact them to say that we've identified you're eligible. If we don't hear from you in a certain number of days or weeks, we'll sign you up and you'll receive your Healthy Start card in your post, your kid will get a free school dinner, or you'll receive pension credit in your account. So income, access and awareness are the 3 barriers, I'd say.
Well, I can't add to all the barriers that have been discussed, but I think whatever the barriers are, the only really way forward to overcoming them at a grassroots level is simply us. We have to come together as a community. The whole point about the Equal Food Partnership is that we're trying to be a vehicle for facilitating all the conversations that we need to have as a community. We're called a partnership for a reason. We want our partnership to be as inclusive, as diverse as possible. So I do hope that as many of you as possible will join our steering group. In fact, the partnership actually emerged from the steering group. Once upon a time, we were just a steering group. And Anna Carr remembered that because she was part of it. Basically, we want you as a community to steer us, to guide us about what direction we should go and how to overcome the barriers. Because by pooling our knowledge, our resources, our expertise, our skills, then there are bound to be solutions, or we're bound to make progress. So there's no alternative to having those big conversations on a regular basis across the community. So we are the solution here in this room if we get together and collaborate as much as possible. So please go to our website to sign up to our newsletter, ask to join the steering group, and keep in touch. And let's all work together and have that conversation.
Great, thank you, Andy. So I was going to ask about solutions to barriers, which we've obviously, a few of us we've touched on already. And I was speaking to somebody earlier on when we were having lunchtime, and we were talking about whether we need to be a bit similar to how there's been a shift in the way that we've approached STEM subjects at school. So the idea of trying to get women and children into science and maths and engineering, and then the shift was to go back to school, to start with the children and start early and start encouraging children. So I wonder whether that's something that we we were talking about earlier on, we need to do more with. We the Eastbourne Food Partnership, through some of the projects that we fund, do engage with some of the schools, and some of the schools are super engaged and have their own school allotments, and are very much wanting to get involved. But is that something that we need to be doing more of, and engaging at a younger point? So people's children are going home, children who are then going to school and saying, "This is what we've learned today. This is what we grew in our allotment at school," and almost educating the parents and other people from that point onwards. Does anybody want to talk to that? There's nodding over to my right.
So I guess the food partnerships across East Sussex, we've identified that as a priority. So we are currently working with the University of Brighton. We've created a special interest group around child health and climate. And so within, so we've got a programme of work called Good Food East Sussex, and there's 8 priority areas within that. And so the food partnerships have highlighted 2 areas within that they want to focus on, one being around food procurement and catering, and one around supply chain and infrastructure. So that special interest group is kind of focusing within those 2 areas as well, and looking at how we can bring together researchers, policymakers, and obviously the food partnerships and people working on the ground, community groups, etc. So we can look at what best interventions to do, and also kind of research opportunities that may come up from that. And so 2 things that have come out of that very first workshop we've had, we've got the following one in November, is looking at the school food contracts. That's coming up for re-procurement. It's obviously a long process to do that. So really at that kind of infancy stage of that, how the food partnerships can be involved in influencing what's going to be in that new contract. Looking at kind of the additional value part of that, so looking at the education element, what can whoever provides that in the future do to educate children around healthy eating. And then also we have this Healthy Schools programme across East Sussex, and so they're looking to develop a pilot with all the primary schools, or some of the primary schools across East Sussex, because one of the things that schools really struggle with is when we're looking at kind of healthy schools, there's always like an emotional mental health lead within a school, there's a PE teacher to lead on the physical activity side of things, but there's no one within a school who's kind of got that dedicated role to look at food. So actually, how can a healthy school service support the school to do more around that and develop a healthy school policy, etc. So that's kind of a sort of infancy area, how we're working with children at the moment. I know Andrew's mentioned a couple of times today around Healthy Start. East Sussex County Council have used their systems to identify those people who are eligible for Healthy Start, and we've been running a bit of a social media campaign around that, just to kind of make people aware of it, so they are all going to be receiving a letter in the next month to say you're eligible for Healthy Start. So hopefully they would have seen that campaign, so they won't think it's spam, and actually then recognise that they are, and that hopefully that will help sign them up. So I can keep you updated on the progress of that. So they're just a couple of things that are happening around sort of children and young people at the moment.
With regards with children, first time I came into contact with a cooker was at secondary school, and I was freaked out. I was in tears because I had no experience of the kitchen, because my mum was very territorial about hers. So she wouldn't let me play and mess around and make a mess in there. So I would really recommend that you work with really young kids, just to get it to be their natural environment as well as the adults.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point.
Thinking outside of the box, because I'm an artist, so maybe I'm not answering your question, but I think it needs to be said, and I'd like everyone to think about this, that a lot of the adults that are struggling around food were children who were well educated, did have grandparents or relatives or neighbours that would have introduced them to food preparation and cooking. But how many of us in the room, after a long day or a bad day, sort of slink home and just grab something very easily, or take a takeaway home with us? I think one of the biggest issues we've got in the country at the moment is there's so many of us are living alone. When you live alone, you don't want to prepare food. When you're cooking for 11, 12, 14 people, it becomes a festival. So how do we in our neighbourhoods start to get together and actually have a few festival meals together? Because there's so much more enjoyment in sharing in the preparation of food. Maybe we need to embed that as well into young people, learn to act as community again.
And just thinking about how food clubs could act as a bit of a focal point for some of these activities, and I'll point a friendly hand in the direction of Feeding Bristol in that northwesterly direction, who I think in about a dozen preschool settings now in the more deprived parts of the city, they've run a project called the Children's Kitchen, which familiarises very young children with fruits and veggies and other items that their parents can then take home from the food club. I remember when I first visited, the staff guide next to the room where the Children's Kitchen was being delivered. I said, "You must be taking us into the wrong room. I can't hear any noise, it's completely silent." But lo and behold, we walked through the door, you had 25 very young children just engrossed and feeling and smelling and becoming familiar with this fruit and veg. It was a wonderful sight, albeit no sound because they were silent. So I point towards the Children's Kitchen as a model that could be replicated for preschool settings. And likewise, on the idea of food bringing people together, communal meals and clubs and social activities, again, we've seen communities form through and within food clubs, so that a group of disparate shoppers who might not have known one another before, despite living in the same postcode, they do get to know one another. They start to organise communal meals and lunches and dinners, coach trips, book clubs and all the rest of it. So you start to get that social element, all thanks to the food club.
Following on from what Andrew says, it reminds me of what happened at the community forest garden that I helped to run in Pevensey. We had a foraging workshop recently, and it was great to see kids really opening up and discovering the experience of finding food in the wild, you know, picking blackberries or raspberries or whatever was available. And we need to expose children to that kind of experience of actually being able to discover that you can actually eat what food actually is in the wild, and that you can actually eat raw food, which is even the adults in the workshop are discovering this for the first time. Some of them, you know, the sheer range and diversity of food that they eat. I mean, nature is incredibly abundant, and you know, so many of the foods in nature we've forgotten that they're edible and that they are highly nutritious and good for us. I think if we can educate children with that kind of lost knowledge, then we're going a long way toward getting toward a healthy food system.
Thank you all, and I will also give a shout out to Rooted, who do a lot of really fantastic work around this with they've got their children's plot now, and the kitchen just newly built onto that as well. So I think that's definitely, you know, that's the kind of community focused projects that we need to all be looking towards. So
Can I just add to that one of the major issues is the access to the place, because generally people will not feel confident to come themselves, and one of the things that we're looking at now is actually organising walking from a place that people feel confident in to coming to the club, because inviting them to come is one thing, them feeling confident to come is quite different. So it's looking at those issues where people need to have the confidence of coming to something which is perhaps alien to them until they get there.
So just for those of you who might not have heard that, it's a very kind of pertinent point about physical access, and you know, not just talking kind of more metaphorically about people accessing support, but how somebody, you know, may very well want to go to Rooted and be part of the community allotment, but may not feel confident in walking in on their own, knowing where they're going. So yeah, so creating more welcoming spaces or routes into to play those spaces for people, which is great. So we're kind of coming up to the 1:30 mark. So I think unless anybody on the panel has anything else they want to particularly say, we'll go out for some questions. Do you want? Yeah.
One thing, just there's a plea really. So because it is actually Good Food Month this month in October, so obviously celebrating all the wonderful food things that happen in East Sussex. So if anybody has got any events happening this month, please do let myself or Eastbourne Food Partnership know, and then we can get that put up onto the Good Food East Sussex website and help promote them for you. So that was just my quick little.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Good. I can't even think of the word that I'm looking for. Yeah, thank you, plug. Whoever said that. Plug. Such a tricky word to remember. So if anybody has any questions, can you pass them along? How do we finance Eastbourne Food Partnership projects and activities going forwards, brackets, next 5 years?
Sorry.
That's okay.
So what happens to that?
I guess it's building the case for it and showcasing all the excellent work that you've been doing over the last couple of years. Obviously, funding is until next December at the moment. So I think showcasing all this event today is obviously a brilliant example. And yeah, I'm obviously always here to fight the corner of the food partnership and the wonderful work you do. And as I said, it's about making it systemic, isn't it, and building it into the policies and the systems and making sure that this work is happening.
Publicise what fridges do. Most people think they're for people on benefits. I don't know whose that was.
That's fine, yeah, it's just
Yeah,
generally
yeah.
people
So
aren't aware what they are.
I was yeah.
We
So,
get people walk in and they just got no idea, and they think they won't take the food because they don't want to take it away from people who need it. But we've got so much, especially bread and fresh veg, that there's always enough for everyone.
yeah.
So then it is more of waste, a food anti-waste project. So it's just that community, and as Andrew said, we're all in it together. We're all the solution. So getting that publicity out there.
Thanks. So yeah, and you know you've got the Seaside Community Hub, which is another step towards moving it away and having those kind of communities again that you were talking about as well, Andrew. So it's not a stigmatized thing where everybody's having to go in and queue up and end up with random food that they might not need / know what to do with. Yeah, absolutely. So with everything else, it's that awareness, increasing people's awareness and educating people around what's going on and what's available. Thank you, Sue. How can we ensure an easier process to take over community spaces to grow food? Does anybody want to take that one on?
Yeah. So within the public health team, we have a Healthy Faces smaller team within that, and so they're working with planning teams across East Sussex and obviously Eastbourne Borough Council within that as well. And so it's about, I guess, influencing the local plans as they're developed moving forward, so that it's in there that people can use community spaces for growing, etc. And ensuring that's in there. So that's one thing I think we can do is really influence the planning going forward in new developments, making sure there is that space that's allocated to allow that to happen as well. I know one of the projects we're doing within the department is with the hospital and using their green space that they have on site, the Hastings site, to do a growing project, but actually going to be doing that at DGH as well. So yeah.
We're just to add to that, we're in constant conversation with Eastbourne Borough Council about allocating council land for growing spaces. And in fact, we're going through the legal process of taking over the lease of a green space opposite Langley Community Centre, so that we can help develop that space with the community. for food growing. The advantage of that site is that it's right in the middle of Langley, and Langley Community Centre did a wonderful job with hosting a food bank and all the other services that cluster around the food bank. And they've got a wonderful cafe, community cafe, and it's a real thriving community centre at the heart of the community. And the green space that we're helping to develop as a community growing space, right bang opposite the front door. You just imagine all that fresh, healthy, organic food grown by the community, going straight to the front door, straight into the Eastbourne Food Bank, and it's also got a community fridge in the centre. So, so people will be able to buy a certain amount of food as well if they don't want the food bank. So it's like a perfect scenario. So we're hoping to develop that as a kind of model for the whole of Eastbourne. That kind of integration between community food growing and the community centre. Eastbourne does have a wonderful network of community centres that are very much part of the local food system. So if we can integrate local food growing as closely as possible with the community centre, then it's a win-win for everybody.
Thanks, Andy. So just kind of leading on from that, actually, we've got a couple which are connected. We've got somebody's commented about community gardens in local parks and lesson on sustainable foraging. I'm sorry, I can't read your word.
So I was just thinking, because there's lots of free food out there, and people need to know not to take everything and what they can take. And I think it'd be nice to have something, even an event like this, about how to forage and how to do it sustainably. And also going on from what they said down there about having accessible gardens, because you can't always get to allotments. There's lots of public parks, Old Town Rec, Guildford Park, and they've got associations. Maybe have something sustainable like a community garden in there.
Yeah, that's great. So with that,
there's a fruit tree guild in Guildford Park.
There's a fruit tree guild in Guildridge Park. But yeah, I mean, this is something that we've been talking about as well, and alongside community composting schemes as well in those spaces. And yeah, we've also talked, Andy said about the foraging workshop. So, all those kind of opportunities would be really great if we can roll them out a bit further as well, so that people do know what is around, and like you said, not to, there's been a big problem with wild garlic where businesses, restaurants have been sending out people to forage wild garlic and wiping out the entirety of what is there. So, a lot of people then keep that as a secret close to their chest. I know the way we go for wild garlic, we don't tell anybody where that is. And we go and we only take what we need, but we keep it a secret because you don't want everybody just going in and decimating what is there. And so I think, a lot of this loops constantly back around to education and awareness, and we can't educate and raise awareness, then we're not going to get anywhere. So so that was so thank you for that, Evie. That was community gardens and local parks. And again, just leading on from what Andy was saying as well, we're definitely looking further afield for those kind of opportunities. And then somebody else has said, I had another one that was linked to that. Someone else has commented about exposing children to food growing, etc., issues of access to those places, which again kind of loops back to what we were saying. It kind of links in with the being able to access and feel comfortable to access those spaces, and again goes back to projects like what the projects the Rooted are doing, where they're introducing children to food growing from the planting your seeds to harvesting and the rest of it. Coming thick and fast now. I'm trying to organise them, but it's I think I've lost that battle. So somebody else has said Devonshire Ward, which is, for those of you who might not know, where we are now in this building.
No, it's not here.
Oh, we're not?
No, Devonshire Ward is east of Terminus Road.
Oh, sorry.
And includes Leafhall.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry, over Seaside direction. Sorry, that's you wouldn't know that I've been living here for years. So Devonshire Ward is the most disadvantaged in Sussex. How do we bring organisations together like Leaf Hall, World of Community Kitchens, Sanctuary, Bourne School to use parks for growing food for public, that the public can access? So again, that kind of links back to what we were just saying about communities being able to access spaces in parks and you know, kind of other green areas where we can have some kind of a combined effort and for people to start taking over. And we did have some planters around town actually at one point where edible food was planted.
Do you want to speak to that? Yes, you do.
Well, I mean, I was part of Edinburgh Eastbourne. We planted some Pritchery guilds in some parks in Eastbourne. So there's one in Archery, one in Guildridge, and one in Shinewater. But we ran out of funding, so we couldn't sort of properly do them. But the Pritcheries are still there, and the planters are still there, and anybody can go along and sort of pick what you need, not what you want, within reason. And yeah, so my aim is hopefully to bring that under our umbrella again and sort of build on that and make it bigger and better, so and more accessible, and encourage people to sort of go and pick it up and help volunteer do all the work as well. Need volunteers.
Thanks, Karen. Right, which? Yes.
Just want to add about access and having more spaces. Compass Arts was given a space about 2.5 years ago. I was interested to hear in the presentation from Rooted that you've had volunteers who have come but then have applied for their own allotments, which is a success story, but also that's quite hard work because that's happened to us as well. And it's meant that there have been patches in the year where we haven't had enough volunteers to maintain our piece of land, which is probably the only outdoor space that our community has got access to. And then we're having to fight to maintain the allotment because the other allotmenteers are saying it's not being looked after as well as they would like it to be. So it's hard work, and it's very hard work when we do live in a culture where people want to have their own allotment. And how do we change that culture where people appreciate that they can grow enough for themselves and their families in a shared allotment?
Thank you. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I've got.
Sorry, I have.
Oh, sorry.
I have no apple basket notes.
Oh.
I just wanted to say kind of.
It should be on.
Hi, I'm Kate Richardson. I work at the Borough Council. A couple of questions have come up about funding, and I just wanted to say that we're in the early stages of trying to work out how to allocate money for social value projects. So we're starting to incorporate social value into some of our contracts. I'll use a housing contract as an example. If we're procuring something, we can write into that contract that they will have to offer certain services to give back to the community. And I'm just thinking, in terms of volunteers, that could be volunteer hours. So if you needed somebody to maintain an allotment, paint your sheds or your buildings, or even clean your gutters, we've got people who obviously have the expertise to be able to come and do that for you, but they could also put aside cash pots. So if you have a need, it has to be in the future, unfortunately. At the moment, we can't fund things automatically, but now. But if you think you've got a project coming up in 12, 18, 24 months' time that you'd like to fund, we can put that aside into a little project register and then allocate it to contracts as they come up. I just wanted to let everybody know about that I'm not quite sure how we're going to get the information out at the moment. But if anybody works with Sian Sweeney, I know she's consciously going to be trying to collate projects for it, and I can as well. If anybody has my email address, it's just kate.richardson@lewis-eastbourne.gov.uk.
Thank you, Kate. So we are 1 minute away, so I'm kind of loath to open up any more cans of worms. We've got a few more questions here. 3 I've grouped together, which are all to do with questions for the council. So perhaps we can just pass them on directly, and if people want to approach us and let us know whose question it was, we can pass that on for you and get those answered, because I'm just conscious that we need to keep on moving. And there was another one which was what has not been mentioned is food presentation and the skills needed. We were hoping to have somebody with us this afternoon called Robin, who is the community chef. So that's a great project which would probably help answer some of those questions. And another one about access to funding being so difficult for small groups and allowing leeways as to how to spend that funding, which that we can all agree on that sometimes there are prohibitive restrictions on what can and can't be done with the money that's offered out. So I think nobody's going to disagree with that. But thank you all. Thank you, Cara and Fenya and Anna and Andrew and Andrew. Thank you all. Thank you for all the questions.